thank everybody in the audience for being here tonight. My name is Bobby Wolf. I'm running for Fulton Superior Court to replace Tom Campbell, who is retiring. I married my wife Elizabeth 13 years ago. We have an 8-year-old son. I was born and raised in our community. I went to Fulton County Public Schools all the way through, 1st grade through 12th grade. I was an Eagle Scout in Troop 463 Atlanta Area Council. In the past 26 years, I've been a prosecutor protecting our community and fighting for victims. Now, what's really important tonight, and why everybody is here in part, is why does this race matter? Why is it important who you choose as your next elected Superior Court judge? And how am I uniquely qualified? Well, you deserve a good judge, one who protects the community and fights and preserves the rights of victims. You deserve a judge who runs the courtroom with business-like efficiency and effectiveness. You deserve a judge who is a wise steward of taxpayer resources. And you deserve a judge with the temperament to be a calm and steady leader. Now, how am I uniquely qualified? I bring a diversity of experience in the courtroom and in the community. I've been a prosecutor for 26 years, first in Cobb, then 18 years in Fulton County, where I was a chief senior assistant DA. I helped to create the first case management system in the history of Fulton Superior Court, where now court dates are unique, meaningful, productive events. I've also spent the past 4 years in the Gwinnett DA's office prosecuting murders and other violent offenses, again, protecting the community, but also seeing how to run an efficient, effective courtroom, unlike what often happens in Fulton County. I look forward to earning your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'd also like to thank all the organizers, Mr. Johnson, House of Prayer. My name is Kevin Farmer. I've been a resident of Fulton County for 35 years. My parents moved me down here in the middle of 9th grade in 1982. I've been an attorney for 22 of those years. Married a girl I met in high school. We've been married for 21 years now. We have 2 daughters, 17 and 15, who attend North Springs High School. I myself also attended high school down here. I began my career a little different track. After law school, I became a public defender in Fulton County, where I saw huge caseloads. And that is part of the problem that Fulton County has. After I had my first child, well, my wife had our first child, I went into private practice for 10 years and ran my own small firm for 9 of those years. And while there, I still continued to do criminal defense work, but also learned other areas of the law, contract disputes, business litigation, real estate transactions, domestic relations, child support, child custody, divorces, all subject areas that come before Superior Court judges. And I really wanted to build a diversity of knowledge and a wide base of knowledge. I took the opportunity after doing that for 10 years. I went back to being essentially a public defender in Fulton County with the Conflict Defender's Office, defending serious crimes in Fulton County. And I knew I wasn't ready to become a judge yet. And I had the opportunity about 2.5 years ago to take a position as a district attorney down in Clayton County. That is something I jumped at. I knew I needed that additional piece of knowledge so that I could know what it's like to operate from both sides of the aisle in the criminal arena and the civil. I have a wider base of knowledge. These are fine people next to me. I have a much wider and diverse base of knowledge, and that's what a judge needs.
Thank you. Ms. Fonnie Willis.
Good evening. My name is Fonnie Willis. I came to Atlanta, Georgia to attend Emory University School of Law in 1993 after graduating from Howard University in 3.5 years with honors. Came down to Emory Law School, graduated in 1996. When I graduated law school, I went to a small minority firm. That firm was located on Cleveland Avenue, and we served the community. We did all types of law. Like Mr. Farmer has just mentioned, we did domestic cases. We argued bond hearings for clients in the community. I did work on murder cases and criminal cases as a defense attorney during that time. I also then worked for myself for those first 4 years and did a lot of juvenile work, both in Fulton County, Douglas County, and Carroll County. both representing juvenile delinquents as well as representing people as a guardian ad litem, where I also continued my practice of practicing law, servicing Fulton County, Clayton County, DeKalb County, Douglas County, and Clayton County. After that, me and my husband at the time had 2 children. And I decided I needed something more stable than private practice. And so I went to work under Raines Carter at the City of Atlanta as a solicitor's office and defended the city in city ordinance violations and began to be the one that prepared their murder cases. For the last 16 years, 4 months, and 4 days, I have worked at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I worked in every capacity at that office, from writing cases to 2 years in sex crimes. I then tried murders. I became part of the special task force that tried cold cases, which was usually murders with sexual assaults. I have tried more complex and high litigation cases than most 10 lawyers combined. I'm noted for trying the longest case in Georgia's history. I am more than qualified. I am the most qualified. I also supervise 25 attorneys making decisions on how cases should be handled in Fulton County.
Thank you. A Superior Court judge has this great opportunity and tremendous responsibility, to not only protect the community from our most violent offenders, but also to know when a person deserves an opportunity to get it right. A lot of times, when we talk about this in the community, we say, we want a judge that's fair, we want a judge that has compassion. Let's talk about your background external of being a lawyer. What qualifies you in diversity of background that you can bring to the bench as a judge? And Kevin, I will begin with you, go to Ms. Willis, and then end with Bobby Wolf.
The question is, what outside, as I said, I moved to Fulton County when I was in the middle of 9th grade. I had experiences, even early in high school, I interned at the Fulton County Public Defender's Office and the Solicitor's Office in Fulton County. I have had experiences where I've had to practice what I preached. My car got broken into in my neighborhood, kids checking locks. As a public defender, we were always arguing for the best thing that was best for our client. If we could help them out and keep them from having a record so that that would not hurt their future going forward, we would try and do that. There are pretrial diversion programs in Fulton County. 2 kids that broke into my car, one was a week shy of his 17th birthday, so he got to go to juvenile court. One was a week past his 17th birthday, so he got to go to big boy court. He got to go to Superior Court and get charged with 5 counts of entering office. And I made it a point to go down there and practice what I preached. I found the district attorney, and I said, hey, this is what I want for this young man. His parents came to speak to me. They let me know that he was on the right track. They showed me his grades. They showed me what he was doing with his life. And this was not a pattern that he was going to fall into. So I went down and I made sure that he got that chance. So external of, and that was not as part of my career, that was as a victim. But I wanted to make sure I practiced what I preached, because first mistakes can happen. And people you're mad at, people are scared. I was just mad at this guy.
Thank you. And remember, this is 1 minute and 30 seconds. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. You know, a judge has a lot of discretion. It's one of the reasons why this race matters so much, and I appreciate you being here tonight. One thing I do on a lot of Saturday mornings when I really should be with my family is to volunteer with the STRAP program, and it's largely in Gwinnett County. It's seeking the right amendable path. And I sit down personally with 16, 17, and 18-year-old young men and women in our community who have been in the juvenile court system. And the idea is to get to them, to mentor them, to give them opportunities, to let them know that you care about them so they don't end up in Superior Court. We had a recent graduation in December, and it was amazing. I talked to one of the moms, and I mentioned this briefly at our last session, and so some of you have heard the story a little bit, but we sat down, and she said, my little baby, I remember him as he was as an infant. I never thought we'd be in juvenile court. We thought his life was over, our family's life was over. We were at our very low point. And now that he graduates from this program, we have hope. He can be a contributing member of society. So as a judge, you have a lot of discretion. You look at all the facts and circumstances. First and foremost, protect the community, But yes, where appropriate, everybody deserves a second chance. We're not dealing with a factory. We're dealing with human beings who are part of our community. And we're only as strong as our weakest link. We have a responsibility as servant leaders to all of our community. And I will serve that way because my experience has shaped how I'll be on the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Willis.
So if I understood the question, it was what service do you offer outside of
Yes.
being an attorney? And the answer to that is lots. One of the main organizations that I participate is called WAVE, W-A-V-E, and that stands for We All Value Excellence. That is a community service organization that basically does activities to feed the homeless, that's taking food around to homeless people. It also concentrates on children and making sure that they have qualities and things that they need, such as Easter baskets or clothes or different things. The homeless component, unfortunately, in children overlap with one another because we do have so many homeless children in society. I also spend a great deal of my time with my Saturday mornings speaking. And I make sure, sometimes I'll speak, this week I'm slated to speak to women who've been the victim of domestic violence. But most of the time, I concentrate my efforts speaking to young children, middle schoolers and high schoolers, focusing on the fact that they need to make the right choices in life. And so I'm constantly speaking at symposiums that sometimes they are with Let Us Make Men, and they will focus on African-American young men to make sure that they're on the right path. Sometimes those activities are with WAVE. Often they are just groups, like the AKAs recently came to me and asked would I speak to their group. And so I'm constantly making myself available to speak to different youth to make sure that they know about the consequences of getting tied up in the juvenile court system and that they have the right resources and paths to help them.
Thank you. There have been cases that as a Superior Court judge you will see, and these cases have mitigating circumstances. They have underlying issues. Somebody may have committed robbery, but they have a crack addiction. They may have gotten into a car accident, but they may be an alcoholic. So the system responded by creating specialty courts, trying to address these underlying issues and actually get a person to a road of recovery. What are your thoughts about alternative sentencing and specialty courts in Fulton County? And I will begin that with Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. I'm a big fan because, again, we're invested in this community together. Number one, we have to protect our community, but we really need to get to the root cause of the problems, especially with non-violent offenders. There are certain people who are so dangerous that they need to be in prison, but the vast majority of our offenders are people who just make the wrong decision. I think the accountability courts make a huge difference. Governor Deal should be commended. The Criminal Justice Reform Council has gone a long way. In my 26 years as a prosecutor, the longest of anyone at this table, I've seen the pendulum shift to being much smarter and effective to get to those root causes of the problem. Again, the judge has a lot of discretion. There are offenses where the range of sentence might be 1 to 20 years. You need to get to the root cause. Also, at least a third of the people in state prisons today have mental health issues. So not just drug abuse, not just alcohol, but mental health. The best way we can protect our community is to get to the root cause of the problem. How much better are we if we turn people around? Again, that's how I spend my Saturday mornings, is to bring our community back together. It benefits everybody. So yes, I'm a big fan.
Ms. Willis?
I also believe in the community courts, both the drug court, the veterans court, and the mental health court. I think that all of those are very needed. We are seeing a lot of people commit crimes, and what you really have is mental health issues. You have a lot of people that commit crimes, and like you said, what we really have is a drug addiction. As a deputy district attorney, I supervise the largest division of the district attorney's office, which is the complex division. And so each of the 16 courtrooms that reported to me had on average 200 cases, some as low as 102 or 110 cases, but many above 300 cases, which talks about the backlog program. And we had to make smart decisions for those cases. And often the best alternative is for someone to get the help they need so they do not become repeat offenders. The reality is if someone has a drug addiction, they are going to continue to commit crime. They're going to continue to steal. They're going to continue to do things wrong. And until you get to the root of that issue, you're going to continue to have problems. And so I'm a big fan of drug courts. One high-profile case that I was recently involved in is Basil Elliott. That is the gentleman that was accused of burning down I-85. And I worked hand in hand with those defense attorneys to make sure that we came up with an appropriate resolution. Wasn't the resolution that all of the community liked, but you have to make decisions that are wise, that are important for our community. And people may know that he ended up being treated, we put a lot of conditions on him, a lot of requirements, but we put him in drug court and he's doing wonderful.
Yeah, he's doing quite well. And Mr. Palmer.
I think this is the one topic that all three of us absolutely agree on. And Fulton County fortunately has the resources to do it. There is a drug court, there is a veterans court, and there is a mental health court. And the mental health court and the drug court overlap because you have folks, as Bobby said, mental health is, the prisons are turning into our mental health facilities. They're de facto mental health facilities. And you have those folks who, for lack of a better term, they self-medicate. They go out and they don't like the drugs that the doctor's giving them, makes them feel weird, they take the other ones. So those two really have to work hand in hand. The Veterans Court, you're dealing with a lot of PTSD, then leads to drug addiction, and I think those courts are doing a great service to the community of Fulton County. And I went from being a defense lawyer, begging to get my folks into that, to now that I'm a prosecutor, I can work on the other side and say, hey, does your client want to do this? And you do run into you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's why those courts are set up that way. When they when an addict relapses, not if he's going to relapse, it's when, because they're going to, it's part of the process. The penalties aren't as draconian. They'll get put on the shelf for a week and brought back, and they have constant attention because it takes more constant monitoring than showing up at a probation office once a month to be into a job. You have to continually work with these folks to monitor and help them.
This is a little bit in the weeds about how judges are judged. In the state of Georgia, we used to have a commission, basically from the governor's office. We now have the legislature who will determine what penalties or sanctions will go on a judge. Some have argued that this process politicizes those decisions more so than historical. What are your thoughts about the current structure of how judges are monitored in the state of Georgia? And Ms. Willis, we'll start with you.
I think to whom much is given, much is required. The reality is, there are certain positions in society that are so important, they deserve to be scrutinized. Let's start with police officers. Police officers have so much power, and what they do is so important that they have to be scrutinized and looked at. A judge has so much power and so much authority. I don't have a problem with the fact that the judges are being scrutinized. Unfortunately, this process is political as well, but I think that is just part of the process, that we need a committee that looks at judges. Unfortunately, Georgia, you probably know, is one of the states that had some of the most judicial complaints of the entire country. That behavior is not acceptable. Judges should be held to a standard, and they should remember that it's an honor to be in that position, and you are there to serve. And it's certainly, those are not your seats, those are the people's seats. And if you cannot behave appropriately, there should be repercussions. And because you are a public figure, you may get public attention. To whom much is given, much is required.
Mr. Palmer?
It is a privilege, not a right, to serve as a judge. And you should have to, I agree, there's a higher standard, and there should be. Judges should have their feet held to the fire. The makeup of the council, now that it's been taken over by the legislature and a little bit of the executive appointing folks, doesn't, quite frankly, concern me. I plan to present myself and to treat others with the respect, because while in private practice and as a DA and as a public defender, I've seen judges treat people horribly and make terrible decisions, and I've learned from that. You treat people with respect, and you're not going to have that problem. You rule based on the law, not on your opinion, and you're not going to have that problem. If you run a courtroom the way it's supposed to be run, if you don't speed at 100 miles an hour, you're not going to get pulled over. You shouldn't. And if you do get pulled over, because there's two parties fighting. Somebody's always going to be unhappy. Nobody walks out of that courtroom unhappy. And sometimes people will file things. I'm more than happy to let the current makeup of the JQC, take a look at whatever I do in the next 4 years, continuing on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pardon me. The fact that we're in the temple of prayer is not lost on any of us. And I answer to our God. I answer to myself when I look in the mirror every day. You know, I set an example for my 8-year-old son. I owe it to all of us. You know, this is our community. And so whatever external process there is, I will treat everyone with dignity, with respect in the courtroom. As a prosecutor, again, for 26 years, there is a fork in the road, an ethical fork in the road. And a prosecutor has a ton of discretion as well, and a ton of power that can be used for good or not. That fork in the road is, are you going to go down the ethical way and seek justice? Not an expedient conviction, not a flash in the newspaper, not a headline that's going to advance your career, but to seek the truth. I took an oath as a prosecutor 26 years ago, and it's something that I live up to every day. And if you elect me as your judge, I'll take a similar oath. And so whatever process is in place, what I can control, what I can do is to be absolutely ethical. Stay a million miles away from any ethical fence. Always do the right thing and be your servant leader. I serve this community, and it starts with ethics. Thank you.
Let me go back to Mr. Farmer for this question, but I want everybody to answer it. In your last answer, you said that you rule based on law, and I think that's quite accurate. But ruling based on law, does that not also include sentencing based on opinion? Because by law, you can have a sentence range of 1 to 10 years, and you as a judge will have the discretion to say, here's what I sentence this person to. What is that based on? What is your judicial philosophy when it comes to sentencing somebody within the constraints of the law?
I think you phrase that as opinion. I think we would all phrase that as discretion. That's our discretion. Every case has different factors. You do have to look out for victims. You have to. You know, if someone's victimized, they need justice. There's no question about it. You look at the facts of the case. How severe was it? What is the record of the person? Sometimes the prosecutors have the power to take a piece of that discretion away. If that person has a prior record, they're going to file what's called a recidivist notice, where you have to give them the maximum, and then what you give them, you have to start at the maximum and come down from there. That is going to be on a case-by-case basis, and that's where the fact that I've worked on both sides of the criminal coin and both sides of that aisle, I think puts me in a unique spot to do that. I've spent half my practice in private practice and half my practice in public service, and I think that gives me a unique perspective as to using discretion when sentencing. Again, people you're mad at, people you're scared of. Bobby's right, there are people that need to go, but there are also people, we talked about pretrial diversions and drug courts. That's got a lot to do with how you're raised and what experiences you've had in your life. And having been on both sides uniquely helps me do that. So that's what I do for.
Thank you. Ms. Willis, and then Mr. Wood.
Certainly, you're correct. There is discretion in sentencing other than those mandatory sentences, but we're not talking about that. So let me tell you what my job was as a deputy district attorney. I am the one that would make the final approval on every case, from armed robbery to drug trafficking to burglaries to theft cases. That is what I have spent the last 3 years doing. Literally doing that, supervising 18 to 25 lawyers. And so when defense attorneys had things that they needed to be brought, judges really want you to come to their courtroom with an agreement already worked out. Those agreements for all of the cases I just mentioned had to come through. And so what I would do is look at each case individually, look at, what was the crime, how bad was the victim victimized, meaning were they hurt severely, what happened to them. Also looking at the defendant's record, looking at, do they have prior criminal offenses? Do they have, are they in school? Are they doing well in school? Do they do community service? I never treated, and I will never treat on the bench, a defendant or a victim like another number. Each case has to be looked at individually. There are defendants that can certainly be rehabilitated. I am famous for putting people into Gary Davis's program that rehabilitates young men and puts a bunch of requirements on them to grow them up and to make sure that they don't find themselves in this position again. And so my philosophy will be to treat everyone in that courtroom individually.
Thank you. And Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, sir. You know, I mentioned in my opening that it's important for us to understand why this race matters, why your vote for Superior Court matters, and why I want you to come out May 22nd, please, and vote. And this is a big area where judges have a lot of discretion on the sentence. The judge on the criminal cases in Superior Court has a lot of discretion whether someone goes to prison or gets probation, whether their life is over, whether the victim gets justice, whether the root causes of the problem are addressed or not. It's very important. And, you know, I'll agree with a lot of what has already been said, and I won't repeat it. I want to add something based on what makes me uniquely qualified to hold this position, and it's the diversity of my experience. It's being in places like Cobb County and Gwinnett County. They have a program that's called work release that Fulton County doesn't have, that I want to bring to Fulton County. And what that does is it gives the defendant a second chance, gives the defendant job skills, give the defendant a trade and a skill so he or she can be a contributing member of society while still protecting the community, while still getting restitution back to the victim. And the way that works is that for, say, a year or for 18 months, every single night for 365 nights, the defendant will come back to the jail and spend the night there, but then go out and work and get a skill so that there's a transition. That's the kind of outward thinking that I get from Cobb and Gwinnett that I can bring back to Fulton County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second phase, Q&A from the audience. I don't think we have any no cards, am I right? No no cards? So do you have no card?
I don't have any.
No card, okay. So if you have a question for one of the candidates, or all of the candidates will have the same amount of time, 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer, same rules apply. So do you have a question? All right, we'll go with you first.
Good evening. So a lot of the questions are focused on like criminals. And so my question is looking at civil and criminal and the way judges are running their calendars and running their courts. If you had to pick a judge who you would emulate, who would that be and why?
That's to every candidate, correct?
Every candidate.
Okay, and we will start with, we'll come down, Mr. Wolf, and go down the road.
Well, Ms. Huckleberry, it's very nice to see you. I know we used to work together, and we worked together with Henry Newkirk. And so Judge Newkirk is who I would emulate. He came from a criminal justice background. He was a police officer, he was an investigator, he worked in juvenile court, and he was an excellent assistant DA, and he exercised that discretion. And he's been a very productive, successful judge, not just on the criminal side, which I think is very important, but also on the civil and the family law side. So Henry Newkirk knows how to manage a caseload. He knows how to make sure that the lawyers play within the rules. But if one side is dragging its feet, to move things along, to identify discovery issues early in the process, to rule on pretrial motions early, not the Friday before trial, not when you have 20 witnesses flying in, but early enough that both sides can have a trial. And he lets both sides know we are going to have a trial. I have the utmost respect for really all the judges, but particularly Henry Newkirk.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I've been privileged to serve in front of a lot of different judges. And if I can split it up and go with criminal from one and civil from another, I'd like to. When I was a very baby public defender, the first courtroom I went into was Judge Russell. And she was one of the first judges in Fulton County on the criminal side to issue scheduling orders. You know, you knew what date discovery was due, you knew what your motion states were going to be, and when she had a trial calendar, there was only one answer: ready. And the trial calendar wasn't a 1-week calendar or a 2-week calendar; it was a till we're done calendar. And so she kept a very tight schedule and kept everybody on the schedule, and she held both the defense and the prosecutions to that timetable. Fulton County has a business court now, where they have 3 judges, and another one of the judges I had the privilege to serve in front of was Judge Westmoreland, and he now serves on that, the business court. I worked in civil law for about 9 years. Again, that's a scheduling order. You don't want to waste the litigants or their lawyers' time. If they need more time, you can give it to them. However, if one is starting to abuse the discovery process, the other side's gonna file a motion to compel. And then you've got to set a hard deadline for that. And, I've heard horror stories of, a civil attorney has to file 5 motions to compel before he gets what's been there for 2 years. You can't do that. You have to keep them on that same type schedule unless they want time to go to mediation or they have time to work it out.
Thank
But
you.
one person can't force the issue. They're gonna get together on.
Thank
I'm
you.
probably gonna use a hodgepodge of judges. I've been in Fulton County for the last 16 years, 4 months and 4 days, but who's counting? And in that time frame, I've tried over 100 cases. And so I have tried a case almost in front of every single judge that's on the bench and a few of them that have retired. And so I'm gonna say for demeanor and respect of the courtroom, I don't think Vincent Tempton Lane can be beat. The way that she treats litigants that came before her, although she's now retired, I hope to live up to that standard. She's just excellent. Everyone, defendants, victims, plaintiffs, everyone in her courtroom is treated with respect. And she's also a very intelligent judge. I've had the pleasure of trying some very high-profile cases in front of Judge Henry Newkirk. I do think that he is also a very smart and intelligent judge. I tried the famous Gay Vernon case in front of him, and he moved us along, but he was compassionate to the victims and made sure that the case moved in a way that was fair and didn't get, weirded out by lights, cameras, and actions, still performed as a good judge. There is no one that would argue with the fact that Judge Russell knows how to move a calendar, keeps her case count the lowest in the building, and makes sure that it's not surprise. People are always saying they're scared of Judge Russell, but the truth is, from day one in Judge Russell's courtroom, you know the system that she is going to use. Judge Ellerby has now taken up her system, and she is also using that court system. And so I would hope that I would bring a lot of those characteristics. Quite frankly, the judge that we'll be replacing is one of the kindest judges. And so his spirit is similar to Judge Lane's.
Thank you. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, sir.
Mr. Farmer raised the concept today that he raised the last time we were together in a forum like this of how you address a criminal defendant. You got to first of all decide whether they fit into one or two categories. Somebody you're mad at or somebody you're scared of. And my question is, to all of you, do you agree with that distinction? And if so, how do you tell the difference between the two?
We'll start that with Mr. Farmer.
Well, as you know, Georgia has 7 deadlies. When there's a victim involved, and if a gun's involved in a crime and someone's hurt with that weapon, burglary, a person's home is their castle. You don't go into a person's home. And the fact, if they are repeat offenders, if they have repeated the same type of offense. And some of them, quite frankly, it's real easy to see. We've all seen horrific pictures of what one human being can do to another. Those are real easy. A 17-year-old kid breaking into a car is real easy to say that you're just mad at him. It's the ones where they're starting to move from, there's that middle ground where you're not sure, and that's where the discretion comes in. And how do you know that? You have to trust the prosecutor and the defense lawyer to do that. If you mentioned that, the judge wants negotiated settlements coming in, you have to rely on your counsel that's in front of you. As a prosecutor, that's what we get to determine. We make recommendations to the defense lawyers. They either take it or they don't. They take it to their client. And if it's not, that's how you get a trial. It's an innate feel that you get over 22 years of doing this. Up here you've got 75 years of experience in determining the difference between mad at and scared. I hope that answers your question.
Dr. Wolf?
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, thank you for the question. Again, why is this so important? Because of the kind of discretion that a judge has. What I bring to the bench is my diversity of experience within the courtroom and within our community. And that's what shapes those decisions. The judge's ultimate responsibility is to protect the community. I think one thing so always to keep that in mind. If you can get to the root cause of the problem and protect the community, then that is the best answer. What is the purpose of a sentence? The judge has the discretion, but what are you trying to achieve? Number one is to protect the community. If someone needs to be in prison, otherwise he's going to go out and kill somebody else, then that's number one. Number two is rehabilitation, get to the root cause of the problem. A third important element is restitution. Make the victim financially whole, and don't ever forget about the victim. Also a deterrent to let our community know that this is not acceptable, and also that we care about each other, and that we're going to bring up our weakest. You know, we don't all start at the starting line together, and I think a judge has to understand that. But the question was, how do you tell the difference? And I think it's, number one, am I protecting our community? That's where it starts and that's where it ends. And my job is to protect you and all the people of Fulton County. Thank you.
Ms. Willis?
To answer your question, first of all, I think it's a poor characterization, actually. I don't think that the judge should have the temperament that one should be angry at the defendants. I think that's a bad forum for a defendant or any litigant to have to come before. Now, how do you judge how defendants, if they are going to be violent or a danger to our community, or someone that should get the benefit of a program? I think that is a different characterization. I think the way that you tell whether a defendant is going to be harmful to the community is, quite frankly, the past behavior is indicative of the future behavior. Meaning, did you shoot someone? That's a problem. And it's a problem if it happens in South Fulton or Hateville or on Bankhead Highway or in Alpharetta or North Fulton or anywhere in our community. And so people that will hurt people anywhere in this community, a judge's responsibility is to sentence them for the crime that they committed. The defendants that you are disappointed in, maybe, if that's even an appropriate thing, you have a young kid and you see he's making bad decisions, you put that young defendant into a tough program where they have to give community service and pay back restitution and make a victim whole and certainly do things that benefit our community so we don't see them again. But no, I don't think it's a good characterization to say angry. I think there are some defendants or some people that commit acts that it is clear from their behavior you have to protect society from them, and there are some defendants based on their behavior and their history and their acts you can help.
May I add 30 seconds? to
She
my answer?
she did not refer to you. So if you want to use your 30 seconds for the next question, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you. I can do that.
All right, do we have any other questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
My question would be, would you all acknowledge, I'm glad to hear you talk about sentencing, but would you acknowledge that racism has reared its ugly head in the courts through the sentencing process? When you can have several individuals who come before a judge where all things appear equal except for the fact that one may be a person of color and the other may not. How would you ensure, sitting on the bench, that you don't become a part of that problem?
All right. And we will begin with Ms. Willis and work our way down this way.
I would acknowledge that certainly, you would be very naive to say that there has never been a disparity in sentencing. So the first part of your question is, yes, I will acknowledge that that happened. What I will tell you is that I have been doing this for over 22 years now, and I have served a lot of victims and a lot of defendants that were charged with crime. After a certain time, and I've supervised a lot of people,